I want you to assume tomorrow morning, every one of the computers in your organization, when it's turned on, has this big display of death screen saying that your computers are now being held hostage by ransomware. What would you do? Who would you call? How prepared are you for handling this? And the things to know about it is if you pay the ransom, you don't know if you're actually going to get your computers back. So this presentation, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a little brief overview. I like to tell people what they're going to learn, how long I'm going to talk, a little bit about who is this guy, who am I, and why am I here and what do I want? What you're going to learn is why nonprofit organizations are very attractive cyber targets. And then I'm going to teach you a little bit about the basics of cybersecurity and privacy for your organization. As a tangent, yes, I was a federal cybercrime prosecutor. I've written a book on cybercrime. I've run a cybersecurity company, but I've also been a privacy lawyer in private practice. And you need both expertise for your organization. We'll go into the intersection between privacy and cybersecurity. I'm going to keep this presentation short, maybe about 10, 12 minutes. The reason is it'll help us, it'll give us some nomenclature for great questions at the end. And I think probably the most value I can give is when you have specific questions for your organization so that you can get information from me that's actionable. So we'll have plenty of time at the end. So as I told you a little bit about myself, I've done a lot of things, been an entrepreneur, lots of different types of law, but the last 6 years have focused on cybersecurity and privacy, learned a ton. My partner is a tenured professor of cybersecurity at Purdue University. We have excellent people, really high-end projects, mostly for for-profit companies. Now, why I'm here is because in 2022, I had the opportunity to help a wonderful nonprofit after the Dobbs decision overturned Roe v. Wade. And this was an organization working internationally on reproductive justice to help people get access to reproductive health care around the world. And they were in the crosshairs, and we donated a ton of our time and did huge projects for them to make sure that they had a cybersecurity system and a privacy system that really protected all the people around the world that they were helping. And that really spoke to me. I said, oh man, we have expertise that can help. Something I really enjoy doing. So that's the main reason I'm here, is I want to do more work with nonprofits. We can't do it all for free, because when to do cybersecurity, it takes a lot of time and effort. But what we do is we reduce our fees substantially for organizations whose missions we support. And plus, I like meeting other new Yaleys and so forth. It's always fun. Okay. So I'm going to see if my next slide will show up. Now, for some reason, the photos on my slides are not going to show up. I do not know why. So you're just going to have to listen to my voice. So I'm turning to the topic of why nonprofit organizations are attractive cyber attack targets. The first thing to understand is that cyber criminals look for the easiest targets. Fundamental to all economic crime is the principle of least effort and risk minimization. In other words, like other economic criminals, cyber criminals strive to find the easiest targets with the lowest risks. Unfortunately, as I have learned, nonprofits typically have a sweet spot of significant assets, and that's anything over $50,000, and poor cyber defenses. It's an afterthought. This makes them very attractive. And cyber criminals don't have any morals. They'll steal from anybody. They'll go after hospital systems, knowing that their attacks are going to kill people. They don't care. Cybercrime today, second point is, it's huge business. No one knows exactly the size of the market, but the best estimates are it's about $1 trillion a year. Think about how our financial and economic systems are profoundly computerized, everything about them. And then there's this quote from an infamous bank robber in the 1930s, a guy named Willie Sutton. And I paraphrase, like when he was asked, why does he rob banks? It's where the money is. Where the money is. Why are you now going to go after computers? Because it's where all the money is. And then never think for a second that $50,000 is not a really good target. You may have a lot more in your coffers than you typically do, but the typical cybercrime is $50,000 or less. You just read about the really expensive ones because they make better headlines in newspapers. All right, so I'm going to take you to this slide, and hopefully this one will play. All right, so now I'm going to get into some of the helpful information, the basics of cybersecurity and privacy. So the first slide shows you a Venn diagram with data breaches in the middle. So I'm going to explain that at the highest level, cybersecurity comprises all the defenses you have to prevent losses and injury from cyber attack. Privacy comprises your efforts to comply with privacy laws to prevent any liability.
You just said that again. I was just.
So you guys see the diagram? There's cybersecurity,
Just the last sentence.
privacy. Privacy here, as I'm describing it, as you need to think about it, there are privacy laws that's going to apply to your organization. And as I'm going to explain, there can be very expensive liability for getting it wrong. One of the biggest ways that you get it wrong is if there's a data breach. And that's why you need cybersecurity. And I'll explain more details, but that's what this is, just to introduce you to the connection, right? So this connection between the two, right, requires, well, let me say this, some of the main privacy laws, like the EU's GDPR, the federal government's HIPAA, and California's very onerous privacy laws, all of them require you to take reasonable precautions to protect the personal information that you gather. Now, they also have all these other rules that say what you're allowed to do with them, right? And you have to comply with those. But most of the biggest privacy-related liability comes from when you fail to safeguard people's information. You get hit by a data breach, and then you got to pay lawyers. You may get sued, and there may be regulatory penalties, lots of money. You just want to stay away from them. The data breach as far as you can. So now we're going to go a little bit into the basics of cybersecurity. Now, why won't that show? There's no reason that's not showing. This is my infographic. All right, so I have this great infographic that I need to figure out how to show you. It is on, but
Maybe because you're it's actually sharing through Ken's.
I have no idea why. I can try to get it. Any idea why this is not showing?
Maybe if you send it to Ken.
I did send it to Ken. Because Ken, I sent you the presentation, but this is a critical, I mean, I could do it orally, but the infographic makes it a lot easier to understand.
You sharing your screen?
Yeah, I am. I will share it again. No idea why. Give me a second. I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna see if I can get it I have it in elsewhere.
You're,
Because I have that infographic in lots of places. In fact, oh, I know where I can do it from. I can do it from my website. See if this works. This is not bringing me back. Okay. All right, folks, see if can you see this now? Yeah, you can see it. I'm gonna increase the size of it. Or at least you can see some of it. Okay.
Yep.
So this is the infographic.
yes,
And I'm now going to explain the basics of cybersecurity for any organization, and it applies to nonprofits forcefully. So you want to think about this topic as developing a mitigation system. You want to mitigate any possible harm. And there are 5 tools that you can use, and you need to think about all 5, and some you use more than others. And you notice at the bottom of the infographic, it says an auditing and adjustment system. So I'll explain these 5. And then at the end of the presentation, I'm going to encourage you guys to ask as many questions as you want about tool number 2 and tool number 3. So the first tool is leadership structure and incentives. While this tool is very important for larger organizations, it is important for any organization. What it really gets you to start thinking about is leadership really matters. Sometimes organizational structure gets in the way or facilitates what you need to do. And then you got to think about incentives. The second tool, cybersecurity, this comprises the people, the processes, and the technologies that you're using to thwart attacks. The third tool, computing continuity, comprises the people, the process, and the technologies that you're going to use to recreate computing operations after you've been attacked. One of the most important assumptions that you need to remember is you're going to be attacked, and there are no perfect defenses. So you need to think in terms of computing continuity. So let's step into that second question I started with about ransomware. If you have done a very good job with computing continuity, you are almost immune to that attack because you have prepared and you're going to follow your little plan and your protocol, and you're going to be able to clean every computer. You're going to install new operating systems, applications, and data quickly and remotely. And that's the end of your ransomware attack. You don't have to pay anything and you have certainty. What percentage of organizations do that? Unfortunately, of the clients that we've had over the last 6 years, only 3 of them had it done properly before we helped them. The good news is for smaller organizations, this is not that difficult if you know what you're doing, if you have a plan. And we'll talk about the difference of whether your organization is using Office 365 or you're using Google Workspace, and all these things matter because it's your computing systems and you have to be prepared for the attacks and what you're going to do. So the fourth tool is risk transfer versus contract via contract and insurance. You have shared cyber risks with lots of entities that you don't know about. It could be a funder, it could be your HR system, any entity with which you interact, there are cyber risks. if you have a good lawyer, they're going to help you negotiate in your contracts how to shift those risks as much as you can off your books and on to your partners. That's one of the things that we've pioneered because of my experience as a general counsel, litigator, a trial attorney. This was easy for me to recognize, but it's part of this that very few organizations get done properly. And of course, with this, you can also use insurance to shift risk. And that's complex. It can be expensive. It is very difficult to buy. And I will hold anyone's hand if they ever have to read one of these cyber liability insurance policies. They're horrible. And the fifth tool that we ask people to remember is this concept of secure partnerships. If you have a partner integrated into your systems, you have to be very worried. It's not going to be that typical for smaller nonprofits, but the larger you get, the more interactions you're going to have. It depends on what kind of digital systems you develop to interact with whatever programs and so forth. But I'll give you the real world example. UBS, which is an international financial company, an investment bank, they literally have a team of 10 full-time employees whose only job is to go on site and vet the cybersecurity of any of their partners. They do full on-site, open the hood, look at everything assessments, because one of the biggest vulnerabilities for anyone is this chain of computing systems connecting. You're only as strong as your weakest link. Okay, so now I'm going to turn a little bit to privacy. Let me see if I can get my privacy slide up. That one's working. Okay, so let's just talk a bit about the basics of preventing privacy-related liability. I already mentioned that privacy deficiencies can be very expensive. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. We have developed an approach to save you from this nightmare. Right? The first part of this approach is you have to diligently identify which privacy laws apply to you. So if you have anything to do with healthcare, you have to worry about HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. If your organization is collecting information from children, 13 or under, you have to worry about COPPA, the Children's Privacy Protection Act. Either of those apply, you need to talk to a privacy lawyer. You could talk to me. I'll be happy to help you understand to what degree they apply, and then there are extra things you have to do. But if those don't apply, then our approach is create what we call a universal privacy system. A privacy system has two parts. It has a privacy policy. And most people are, familiar. They may have read their privacy policy, or their web developer gave them their privacy policy. Okay, what you really need is a customized privacy policy, and it has to be accurate, and I'll explain how you make it accurate. But the second part of the system is you need people and processes in place that are going to implement what your privacy policy is supposed to do. So this universal privacy system, the policy aspect has four parts. The first thing you have to do is accurately explain the personally identifiable information that you are collecting. You might say, oh, this is easy. No, not really, because you have to talk to everybody in your organization, because it could be the phone calls that you take. It could be a little app that you use and interact with some of the people, or a partner is using an app. You really have to be diligent to identify all of the personally identifiable information that your organization is getting from anyone, including your employees. But if you do that, you're going to be in great shape. And your privacy policy is going to list everything. There's no downside to not listing everything. You're better off listing stuff that you don't even know. And this also includes talking to whoever's doing your website because you don't know what information they're collecting. So the second part is, in this privacy policy, your customized policy, you have to explain how you're going to use all this information and how you're going to store it. Are you going to be selling it? Or is it just going to be sitting in a folder? Are you going to be using it to present to your board of directors so that there's other people outside your organization who are getting access to it? Things like that. And a third part of this universal privacy system is that you have to explain your community's privacy rights. And the basic rights are the ability to share. I want to see the personally identifiable information you have about me. And if there are errors, I need to be able to tell you to correct it. And you also should give me the ability to just delete everything. The final element is you've got to give your community the ability to communicate with you effectively. Now, if you've done those four things and you put it in your privacy policy, it will comply with the most onerous privacy regulations around the world, the EU's GDPR and two of the California privacy laws. And the good news is almost no one's going to read your privacy policy. So it's really just an opportunity to lose money. But if you do what we're telling you, you're going to be in a situation where you're almost immune to privacy liability because you'll have a customized privacy policy that meets the most onerous standards, and you will have taken reasonable cybersecurity precautions. None of the privacy liability for data breaches is what's called strict liability, which means even if you did your best, you're still going to have to pay. No, if you've done your best and you could prove you've done your best, right, judged by a reasonableness standard, then you have done as much as you can to minimize the high cost privacy related problems. And that's what we do with our clients, is we make sure that they understand both. So with that, I'm done with the basic overview, and I encourage everyone to ask questions. We could talk about, if you feel comfortable in telling like the size of your organization and what you're doing. I'm happy to give you some information as long as you don't mind that everybody hears what we're talking about.
Okay, any questions for Elliot?
I have one. I was fascinated by the $50,000 or less figure, because when people think about God's love, we deliver $17 million budget a year. I mean, there are some very large nonprofits here in New York, but a lot of the people that we see at YANA are very small. And so was it like 80% of these are targeting these 50K and under, or is it that
percentage than that? But the way that cybercrime works today is it's an automated system to a substantial degree. Like if this were, a different presentation, we'd go onto the dark web and I would show you how easy it is to buy a ransomware subscription. So if we wanted to start attacking people, we could buy a subscription for a month, a year, that comes with tech support. And it allows us to launch the attacks. This is, and again, it's a business and it's automated, because now think about how difficult it is to physically break into someone's house. You have to go there in person. You have to case, make sure there's no one looking or there's cameras or so forth. There's a physical reality that limits what it's like to use a brick and mortar robbery. In cybercrime, there are no. You can rob anyone whose computer is connected to the internet. You have radically reduced the attack costs. So $50,000 for almost no effort is an amazing result. Now, there are very sophisticated cyber criminal teams that will go after much larger organizations. I started with that $250,000 theft. That's a real example from a nonprofit. They didn't know that they had just given away $250,000 for 3 months. And the attack wasn't that sophisticated, but it literally was a hacked email address that the criminals sent the email that said, hey, we're changing our bank account. So for the next payment, would you please send it to this account? And they didn't have the financial controls in place. So one of the things that like we do is we go through and talk to whoever's in charge of your money. And we go through all the financial controls. And a simple rule that we tell everybody to do is you cannot allow any changes in payment without what's the equivalent of multi-factor authentication. And if they had simply done that, they would not have lost $250,000.
So Elliot, I've got a question. A lot of nonprofits on their donate page, they'll have their routing number and how to transmit an ACH. Does that expose them?
It is not a significant exposure because then the attack surface that you're dealing with is the bank. But also, you always have to assume that part of your attack surface, and attack surface means every part of your computing operations and your people is a surface that the criminals can try to infiltrate. So if you're using online banking, right, absolutely you have to be using multi-factor authentication. But think about this. If someone hacks your system, we always ask this question is, well, how easy it is for them to look at your computer, if they can now control your computer, and find where you store your passwords. Now, if it's in a password manager, like even Google gives you one for free, that's not going to be easy for them to crack. Now, unless they really are what's called an advanced persistent threat, and then they will do things like they'll install on your computer what's called a keystroke monitor, and then they will get everything you type. But that's for someone who's really trying to steal more than $50,000. Although it is getting to the point where $50,000 with that type of attack isn't that bad. They're just not going to be that thrilled with just 50. But there's many, I mean, most of the nonprofit organizations that I've dealt with have far more than $50,000. And if a cyber criminal gets $250,000, they're thrilled. So, and another topic, if there's no more questions, the thing I will highlight for everyone is go back to
Wait, there's, I think, Angela. Go ahead, Angela Dale.
Hi, yeah. So I'm president of the board of a nonprofit, and we actually just got hacked and they stole 3 million, which it looks like we're going to get back. But as the board, would you recommend that we have the systems audited every year, or how do we help the organization make sure they're covering their bases in this regard?
So I'm a big believer in having a board that's proactive when it comes to many aspects of an organization, but particularly cybersecurity. I'm on different boards. One of the reasons people want me on boards is because of the cybersecurity expertise. So part of your oversight should be asking the right questions. There should be on your annual agenda, right? These questions. And Angela, you could contact me directly and I will be happy to give you the questions. Does your board have a technology committee?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Does your board have a technology committee?
No.
So I'll just give you an example of now what's the gold standard. And obviously going to be from a much, much larger organization, but it'll give you a sense of what boards can do. So Equifax was subject to a $2 billion data breach in 2017. Its board was asleep at the wheel. No longer. The board recognized that the leadership was so important that not only did they create a technology committee with a very specific agenda to oversee cybersecurity, but the board hired an independent auditor to make sure that everything was being done. So when you step
So is
back
that
and look,
separate from what you do?
we do that as well. We help organizations, but for like, it depends on like what, how many employees is your,
It's probably 100, and we also have medical records.
yeah. So do you have someone who's in charge of cybersecurity? You have a chief information security officer?
Yes, we do.
Right. So that person should, if you go back to that 5 tool slide,
Mhm.
that first tool about organizational structure and leadership, that person should be able to report and be required to report to the board. All right. So you could have dotted lines, but they should give at least a minimum an annual presentation to the board on what's going on. And the board needs to be educated enough to make sure that the actual CISO and the rest of the organization is taking reasonable measures. And that's just not that hard. Like if we can explain to a board in like a half hour what you need to ask and what you need to know. And then if you do those things, we give you a checklist, then you'll be in a great position to know whether your organization is doing the right stuff. So to answer your actual question, do you need an annual audit? Absolutely. 100%. There should be an annual cybercrime simulation that's done by a third party.
Mhm.
That includes the board. Because if the simulation is done correctly, it forces the organization to confront the reality of an actual cyber attack. And they absolutely should have the board involved. They should notify the board as one part of what's called, your cyber incident mitigation protocols. It's something that my partner and I put together 5-6 years ago. That's the next generation beyond what's called an incident response plan. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about it as a CEO, as an entrepreneur myself, who happened to be a cybersecurity person as well. And I'm like, what I want is a system that we can use immediately to reduce the financial loss as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And unfortunately, what you'll see is in a lot of cybersecurity, it's from technologists. I'm not a technologist.
Mhm.
I come at it as a pragmatist. That's why we actually named the company Practical Cyber. So I love the opportunity to be able to talk to boards of directors, particularly after they have been hit, after the company's been hit, because then the messages resonate more powerfully. It's harder to say, to get someone to really say, what are you going to do with my first question? All the computers are shut down. They are bricks. You can't do anything. All right. Force you to really think about that. And that's a question that your board should have asked. Like again, Angela, feel free to contact me. I'll give you a bunch of time just because of your participation here, and I'll be happy to answer more questions.
Thank you.
That's why I'm sorry.
Sorry, could I ask a question? So I work for a very small educational nonprofit, tight budget, 6 employees, probably about, 500,000 a year-ish. And the reality of our situation is we understand that to provide the right cybersecurity for both all of our desktops as well as our remote laptops, we have to go through like a third party IT. Um, that will actually provide the type of monitoring and security that needs to be in place 24/7. Now for us in our position, because we're such a small organization, we have trouble budgeting for that. So I was just wondering if you know of like any federal, state, independent agencies that provide grants specifically for IT and cybersecurity for nonprofits.
I do not know of any grants, but I will say this. With 6 people, definitely you should contact me, because if you move everyone to Google Workspace and you have someone set up the security in Google Workspaces for yourselves, and it depends on which edition of Google Workspaces you're using. You can also be a Microsoft company, but for 6 people, it would shock me that you need to hire a managed service provider or a managed service security provider for what you're doing. And
Okay.
you need to talk to a company like us, because we don't sell that service,
Yeah.
right? What we do is we give advice on how to do things the most cost-effective way. And your cybersecurity budget could be very small for a 6-person organization if you get the right advice, because there's a lot of cybersecurity that's sold using fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And as a former cybercrime, as a former federal prosecutor, and a consumer fraud lawyer, that pisses me off. I hate when cybersecurity companies take advantage of the information asymmetries. So I'll get off my soapbox. Sorry about that.
All right, thank you.
Elliot, John Welker has a good question. What is the ballpark cost for an independent cybersecurity audit?
Depends on the size of your organization.
Yeah, John, can you unmute? What size org did you have in mind? Well, let's just.
All right, so I'll give you
Yeah.
the range. If you go to,
I'm unmuted. This is John Welker. I'm unmuted.
Is okay.
Okay. I'm thinking of it.
No.
Do you mean the
What
number of
happened?
members, or do you mean the number size in terms of
Yeah,
total members?
the size of the organization you had in mind, John.
Time off.
Directly, board of directors, let's say 20 people, but in terms of people that can access our systems, say 120 people.
so
Just ballpark.
it's a great question. And the term audit needs to be defined. There are many different types of audits. You can
Well,
have.
I'm referring to what you said earlier. I'm referring
All right,
to.
so I'll give you the information I think you need to have, if you don't mind. There are different levels of review, just like in your financial reports. There's just a financial statement, then there's a review level, and then there's a fully audit. There's infinite levels of auditing for your cybersecurity. Here's what I strongly recommend. That we created a product just to solve this problem. Instead of spending $50,000 on a very detailed cybersecurity audit, start with what we call a high-level roadmap. If you haven't had an independent third party talk with you and find out the basics of your computer operations and the elements in your cybersecurity and computing continuity plan, then use this roadmap. You talk to us. We go through it. We don't go on site. We're not installing things on your system to see what you're doing. We're not auditing down to the level of making sure that everything you've done is actually being done properly. No. We then give you this roadmap. Say, oh, here are the things you're doing well. Here are your big gaps. And we do it with a prioritization rating. So we do those projects for for-profit companies between $15,000 and $20,000. If you're much larger, we do much larger amounts. But that's the type of project that we did for this International Reproductive Justice company, and we cut our price in like 2/3 for them. Right? And that's the type of interaction that you need to have. You have to have somebody who's going to tell you the truth. Oh, great. These 5 things you're doing really well. These 4 things, oh my God, it's a level 5. In the next 3 days, we need to just fix these things. Okay. And then you talk with us, and that's the type of thing you start with. And once those fires are put out and you have this roadmap, you then know how much it's going to cost you, and you adjust your budget. And one of the things that we have recommended in every single situation is annual cyber attack simulations. It is the best thing to test, and it's a great way of auditing while getting all these other benefits, as opposed to if you go to a typical cybersecurity consulting company, one of the big 4, you're talking about $50,000 to $100,000. They're going to try to take as much from you as possible. I recommend talking to someone that you trust, like, or you know, who's not trying to sell you something, or find an organization like us who's not trying to make money off you, but wants to tell you the truth so that you can protect yourself, so that you can have more assets to give to the people who need it and to help achieve your mission. So I do encourage people who want that type of interaction. Happy to talk to you for free. And then if it's a big project, we can't commit to do everybody's project for free, but we will commit to support people's missions by cutting our prices. This way, our private companies kind of subsidize some of our better work.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Charity Navigator, when they rate, nonprofits in terms of how efficiently they're using money, do you think that organizations like Charity Navigator are recognizing the necessity to devote a certain percentage of the annual budget to cybersecurity? Do they recognize that this must happen?
I have no idea. I've never heard of Charity Navigator. And I think it's a great question. They should. And if anyone knows someone there and they want some information on what are the basics that each nonprofit should do, I mean, we've touched on them today, and I'd be happy to give them more information so that there could be a realistic assessment of what nonprofits need to do, because it's an essential part of protecting yourselves and promoting your mission.
I actually do have access to the president
Great.
of Charity Navigator, or at least somebody who's in partnership. So
I would be happy.
we can find if there's interest. So I think the connection.
Okay, any more questions, please?
Great.
Okay, and Elliot, can we follow up by sending the slide deck, the complete slide deck to
Yes,
our group?
I will be happy to.
Okay, because I know everyone that tuned in, we automatically will follow up with you after every YANA Zoom with a deck of information, and we'll make sure that Elliot's slide deck that did not quite come through tonight will be in full form.
I do have a
Anybody who
question.
wants to contact me, just send me an email. I will respond and set up a time to talk with you and try to give you some good advice.
Yeah, Lon Berkeley.
I do have a question here. I'm a past president, currently treasurer of a nonprofit, about $3 million, got about 25 staff. We were recently hacked, lost only $25,000, we think. Is there any recourse? We've gone back to the bank to see if there's any insurance that they have. Are you aware of any?
Lon, you're asking an excellent, though very complex question. And the risk of being immodest, you are talking to one of the few lawyers who can answer it, but I'm happy to ask you a whole bunch of questions. And I would love to see if we can get you that $25,000 back.
Okay, I'm happy to follow up with you then.
thank you for that note, Gene Kelly.